Hi everyone, I'm Ava and today I want to talk to you about 6 Dutch habits that I picked up since I moved to the Netherlands from the US a year ago. Can you believe it? In a year, I have picked up some Dutch habits. These were things that I did not do in the US, and I'm pretty sure most Americans don't do them, but my experience has been that these things are Dutch, and as an American, I've started doing things a little differently. So let's start with number 1, and that is opening the window even when it is really cold outside for een beetje frisse lucht, for some fresh air. I couldn't believe it when I found myself a few days ago. So it's been pretty hot recently when I'm filming this mid-September, but we had a couple of really cold mornings and I found myself opening my windows, these windows that you see here, so that I could get a little bit of fresh air. I would never do that in the US. If it is cold, we shut our windows, we even turn up our heat, we do everything possible to make it as warm as we can indoors. Whereas here, I've started to find that a little stuffy. My girlfriend would actually always do this when we lived together back in the US in Philadelphia. She would open the windows in the middle of the winter and I would be so confused because it gets really cold, so you're paying for heat. And at the time, I just didn't understand it. I didn't know why we needed to have our windows open so often. When we were living back in the US, even though she wanted to keep the windows open, I pushed against it. I was like, no, we are keeping the apartment warm because it is winter. What are you doing? This makes absolutely no sense. Then fast forward a little bit and I started living in the Netherlands on my own while she was finishing up her job in the US. And I started to notice, my apartment gets a little bit stuffy. Why don't I open up the windows? Well, it's not that cold today. It's not that cold today. And then I kept doing it until I realized it was December. It was absolutely freezing. And if I didn't have my window open for at least part of the morning or part of the day, I would just not be able to focus on my work. I wouldn't feel like I really woken up. So I really am now a believer in opening your windows even when it's cold for a bit of fresh air. Go figure. Things I never thought I would do in my entire life. Number 2 on this list is riding a bike when you have to go anywhere that's more than like a 10-minute walk. This to me is unbelievable. First of all, I am so uncomfortable biking still. I'm a lot more comfortable than I used to be, but I'm still not at a point where it is absolutely natural for me to be biking everywhere, and it's absolutely not the case that I feel like a bike is the extension of my body, my soul, and my being, like the Dutch people watching this video probably feel about their bikes. For me, biking is just an easy way to get around. And in the US, I really liked walking. I would walk everywhere. So I'm from New York City, where I grew up just walking the entirety of New York City. It was not uncommon for me to walk from East Village or Chinatown way down south to up north in Manhattan to the Upper East Side or something. It was really common for me to walk for hours and just feel really good and invigorated. Now, I notice that if I need to go somewhere that's a 20-30 minute walk, I'm going to think twice about walking. I'm going to choose to ride my bike. I really did not think that would happen. When I first moved to the Netherlands, if I had to go somewhere that was a 40-minute walk, I would prefer to walk because I just thought it was a nice walk. It was a nice way to stretch some muscles. Whereas now, I am getting on my bike. I'm going to deal with my clumsiness on the bicycle. I'm going to deal with all the other bicyclists running past me. All of that because I cannot fathom walking 40 minutes to go have dinner somewhere or anything. And I have to say that this has been a recent change because I have been uncomfortable biking because I just didn't grow up biking. I grew up in big cities where I learned how to bike at some point, but I never practiced. So you know how you say that you're just supposed to get on a bike and your muscle memory will do all the work? Well, that's just not true. I am living proof that that is just not true. That said, even for someone like me, I cannot imagine walking that much when I have the option of riding my bike. So this is definitely very Dutch. In the US, not everyone prefers to walk, but driving your car or taking public transport will be the alternatives. We're not as used to biking as people are here. Obviously, the Netherlands is the biking capital of the world. Number 3 is not being able to stay indoors when it is sunny outside. In the US, it is sunny like all the time. All the time. There are way more sunny days, even in the winter, than there are cloudy days. Here in the Netherlands, it's a little different. I happen to like cloudy days. I like rain. I like the cold, temperate weather. I don't like it when it gets too hot. One of the reasons why I love living in the Netherlands. I know, that's not how most people feel, but that's how I feel. I'm a little different in many ways. So even as someone who likes it when it is cloudy and not too sunny and not too warm, I find that I cannot stay indoors anymore since I moved to the Netherlands, because everybody, when the sun is out, the Dutch folk are out. They are enjoying everything that the horeca, the cafes, the restaurants have to offer. They go to parks, they just really make the most out of a sunny day. And in the US, I didn't really feel that way. I noticed that my girlfriend, who is Dutch, she would really want to get out of the house when it was sunny, but it is sunny all the time. So we would be out all the time. And that was just not the case for me. I did not have this urge, and I think many Americans don't have this strong urge to make the most out of every sunny day. Because really, if you don't do something today, you could just do something tomorrow or the day after. But here, I now cannot sit indoors. Like today, for example, it is a sunny day outside, and I wanted to film this video because I wanted to share these Dutch habits with you. But I had to first go for a walk, sit outside, drink some coffee, get some brunch, because it is a nice sunny day. The old me, the old American me, would just stay indoors and just do my thing because it doesn't matter if it's sunny out or not. So this is another one of those things that really surprised me. I probably started noticing that I was doing this in March when it really got to be more sunny outside, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is my chance. And I caught myself doing it. Number 4 is grocery shopping more frequently. Now in the US, we really like to go grocery shopping maybe once or twice a week. I know I'm generalizing here, but this is pretty common. We have a lot of stores that are catered to exactly that, to buying in bulk, like a store like Costco, maybe, where you can just get everything in bulk in one place, and you maybe go there once a week. You know, if you have a big family, you grab all the stuff you need, and then you just don't make very many frequent trips. Here in the Netherlands, I've noticed that people are really not hesitant to go to a grocery store at the drop of a hat. I've even experienced being at someone's place for dinner, and then they're like, oh, do we feel like dessert? Let's just go out and get some dessert at the grocery store. We would do this in the US, but really not as often as I've seen people bring this up here in the Netherlands. I've also noticed that because of the corona regulations, where people were advised not to go to the grocery store too often, people would say, well, I did so good this week, I've only been going every other day. So I've been really surprised by that, because every other day in the US is, well, really frequent. It's like, what are you buying? But I think the difference comes from the fact that here I've seen, even if this may not be true, my experience has been that the grocery stores almost seem to be designed for people to just quickly go in, grab what they need, and come out as soon as possible. The stores are small, there are few items available, you don't need to make too many choices, and there are these really fast, efficient self-checkout counters. So everything is really quick and easy. In the US, it's just a little different. We have more choices and not as many self-checkout counters at the grocery stores, but I think it's just how we Americans also view grocery shopping. We tend to include it as a chore or as an item on our list, like, okay, maybe twice this week I'll go grocery shopping, or at the end of the week I'll go grocery shopping. But it's really not the case that, oh, I really feel like making something today, so I'm gonna go grocery shopping. That doesn't happen very often. And the last thing I wanna say about this is, in the US, it's not very common to get your lunch at the grocery store. So here in the Netherlands, if you are at lunch, you can simply, in your lunch break, go to a grocery store, because there are also so very many grocery stores. Like, on every other block, you will find a grocery store. Whereas in the US, grocery stores are more spread out. This might also contribute to how frequently people go to the grocery store. In the Netherlands, during your lunch break, you could just pop into a grocery store and get yourself a salad, a maaltijdsalade. And these are really great things that you can get for lunch, and you don't need to plan ahead. But again, this is not something that I see happening in the US. We don't really have these lunch salads or pre-packaged meals that you could just eat in the middle of your day. You know, we usually have food that you can heat up in the microwave, so not something that you can just quickly consume. And I think these maaltijdsalades, or these salads, are really just one more example of how people just quickly go into a grocery store and come out. we would go to a restaurant to grab our food or another takeout place to grab some lunch. Here, people go to the grocery store. Number 5 on this list is also related to grocery stores, and that is now every time I go to the grocery store, okay, maybe not every time, but quite frequently when I go to the grocery store, I find myself buying toetje or gebak just so that I can enjoy some freshly baked goods. In the US, I would just buy chocolate to have with my meal or throughout the day. Buying these baked goods isn't as common. We definitely have some kind of baked goods in the US, but they don't tend to be fresh at the grocery store. Maybe some grocery stores and not others. But as a result, I never really bought full-on desserts or full-on like apple pie at the grocery store that I would then have at home. There are definitely places in the US like Whole Foods where you can get some freshly baked goods, but it's definitely not as common and it's not as good and there isn't that much variety. I know that's one place people go to buy birthday cakes, for instance, at a grocery store, but I would not buy that on a daily basis. Here, it is quite frequent that I find myself buying these little pastries and things. And yeah, my diet has changed a little bit because of that. I have never consumed so much sugar. So what do you guys do? Let me know in the comments if you are like me and you buy pastries often at the grocery store, or if you are American and watching this, what do you think? Do you buy a lot of pastries in the US? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear about your experiences. And finally, number 6, I have found myself eating more cold lunches than ever since I moved to the Netherlands. And not just that, I almost don't want to eat hot lunches anymore. In the US, getting hot lunches, like getting Chinese food for lunch, is very common. Also, what's pretty common is eating leftovers from the night before. If you have leftover Thai food from the night before, you will eat it for lunch. You won't wait to eat it for dinner. Eating it at lunch is totally a-okay, totally acceptable. I remember when my girlfriend and I visited the Netherlands the first time since we started dating, and this was still pretty recent into her stay in the US when she had moved there. And her family was asking her about her diet in the US because they were concerned that she might just be eating burgers or I don't know what the concern was. But I mean, I can see how, that is a legitimate thought to have that maybe fast food is what's more available in the US if you're not quite familiar with how things work. That's not the case in big cities, definitely. But they would ask her about what she ate for lunch, for instance. And my girlfriend would just say like, sometimes I just have leftovers for lunch. And people were shocked. They were like, what? You're going to eat warm food, warm leftovers for lunch? That doesn't make any sense. And to me, it didn't make sense that you wouldn't do that. So even though my girlfriend had this idea in her head, she actually gravitated towards the way Americans did things, towards how I did things, which is just eating whatever was available for lunch. You can also just go out and get lunch in the US, and oftentimes that is hot lunch. We of course eat salad, which is cold, but we have very many hot lunches. Here, that is not the case. You can of course get a salad, but what is pretty common and what I have so willingly adopted is the boterham. Eating sandwiches or boterham for lunch. I did not do this in the US, but when I moved to the Netherlands and started working, I found myself taking a few sandwiches with me to work. And I was especially surprised when one day I craved a hagelslag sandwich at lunch. For lunch, when I think of chocolate sprinkles, I still 100% think of special occasions, dessert, candy, but here, hagelslag, chocolate sprinkles, are a very common thing to have for breakfast, and I think it's possible to eat them for lunch. I don't know. That's what I've started doing. Not every day, but I definitely do it because it is delicious. Why wouldn't you want chocolate for lunch? I mean, who can argue with that? So of course, I very quickly adopted this habit of eating boterham for lunch, especially because oftentimes boterham involves really, really delicious Dutch cheese, which I am a fan of. Anyway, so when I found myself taking boterham to work 5 days in a row, I knew that I had changed for the better. And now I'm surprised that I actually find it a bit weird to eat warm lunches. Like, I'm just not used to it anymore. It's just how my diet has changed. So those were 6 Dutch habits that I have developed since I moved to the Netherlands a year ago. I know this is not the end. I know I will develop more Dutch habits. In the meantime, if you are Dutch and watching this, let me know if you can think of any other stereotypically Dutch habits that maybe you do. And if you are not Dutch and watching this, let me know if any of these things surprised you or stood out to you.